Have you ever been promised a fairy tale, only to discover the prince was actually living in his mother's basement? My name is Margaret. I'm 58 years old, and I almost wired my entire retirement savings to a man who claimed he was an Emirati Sheikh. But when I started following the money trail, I uncovered a truth so shocking it changed everything I thought I knew about online romance. This is the story of how I went from almost losing $180,000 to exposing one of the most elaborate romance scams I've ever heard of. And trust me, by the end, you'll understand why you need to share this with every woman you know. Thank you for being here. I believe this story will help you or someone you love recognize scammers and the red flags we all need to know. So this is the perfect moment. Hit that like button and subscribe. You guarantee all the next stories without having to search for them. Now, let's begin. I never thought I'd be the type of woman to fall for an online romance. At 58, I'd been divorced for 12 years, raised 2 daughters on my own, and built a successful career as a financial advisor in Minneapolis. I understood money, investments, risk assessment. I'd spent decades teaching clients how to protect their assets from fraud. But loneliness, that's a vulnerability no spreadsheet can quantify. It was February 2024 when Sheikh Khalid Al-Mansouri sent me a friend request on Facebook. His profile showed a distinguished man in his early 60s, silver hair perfectly groomed, wearing traditional Emirati robes in some photos and expensive Italian suits in others. The backdrop was always luxurious. Dubai's skyline, private yachts, what appeared to be a mansion with marble columns. His profile said he was a widower, an oil investor, and a philanthropist who divided his time between Dubai and London. I almost ignored the request. But his first message wasn't the typical, "Hey, beautiful," I'd seen from other random men. Instead, he wrote, "I noticed your post about financial literacy for women. As someone who manages investment portfolios across the Middle East, I found your perspective refreshing. Would you be open to exchanging ideas?" It was professional, respectful, intelligent. For 2 weeks, we discussed economics, global markets, the ethics of wealth distribution. He seemed genuinely interested in my opinions. He told me about his late wife, Amira, who had died from ovarian cancer 3 years earlier. He spoke about his daughter studying medicine at Oxford, about feeling disconnected from Western culture despite his business ties there. He asked about my daughters, my divorce, my dreams, and slowly, imperceptibly, the conversations shifted from intellectual to intimate. "Margaret, you have a brilliant mind," he wrote one evening, "but what strikes me most is your warmth. In my world, I'm surrounded by people who want something from me. With you, I feel I can just be Khalid." The words landed exactly where they needed to. I'd spent years being mom and the financial expert, someone valued for what I could do, not who I was. By March, we were video calling daily. Or rather, I thought we were video calling. The calls always had technical issues, frozen screens, audio-only connections, brief glimpses of a figure in dim lighting. "The internet infrastructure in Dubai can be unreliable," he explained. "And honestly, I'm self-conscious about my appearance since Amira passed. I've aged so much from stress." I accepted this explanation because I wanted to. He started talking about visiting me. "I need to finalize a major investment deal first," he said. "An oil field acquisition in Abu Dhabi. Once the wire transfer clears, I'll fly to Minneapolis. I want to see the lakes you've described, walk through your neighborhood, meet you face to face." The anticipation consumed me. I told my daughters I was seeing someone. They were cautiously supportive, though my younger daughter Emily asked, "Mom, have you actually seen him on video? Like, clearly?" I brushed off her concern. Then came the first request for money. It was subtle, almost apologetic. "Margaret, I'm embarrassed to ask, but I'm in a difficult position. The investment deal requires a bridge payment of $5,000 to secure the transaction. My funds are temporarily locked in offshore accounts due to banking regulations. Could you wire the amount? I'll repay you triple when the deal closes next week. Plus, I'll bring you the most beautiful Dubai gold jewelry as a thank you." I hesitated. Every instinct I'd honed as a financial advisor screamed warning, but Khalid had an answer for everything. He sent documents, official-looking contracts with Emirates Bank letterheads, government seals, pages of legal terminology. He provided a bank account in the name of Mansouri Investment Holdings, LLC, registered in Delaware. He sent photos of the oil fields, of himself supposedly at a meeting with Emirati officials. And most convincingly, he sent voice messages where he sounded stressed, vulnerable, almost tearful. "Margaret, I understand your hesitation," he said. "If I were in your position, I'd be cautious too. But please understand, this deal represents 2 years of negotiation. If I don't secure this payment by Friday, I lose everything. Not just the investment, but my reputation in the Emirates. I'm trusting you with this because I've never felt this connection with anyone since Amira." I wired the $5,000 on Thursday evening. He called me immediately, his voice full of relief and gratitude. "You've saved me, Habibti. I'll never forget this. Next week, when I hold you in my arms, you'll understand how much this meant." For 48 hours, I felt like a partner, a savior, someone essential to this man's life. Then Friday passed. The deal supposedly hit another snag. The Emirates banking system requires an additional compliance fee, $8,000. "Margaret, I know I just asked you for help, but this is the final hurdle." And that's when the pattern began. Every resolution led to a new crisis. Every promise of repayment got pushed back another week. By early April, I'd wired $31,000 across 7 different transactions. Each time, Khalid's explanations grew more elaborate. Customs fees for gold shipments, medical emergencies for his daughter, legal fees for an inheritance dispute, security deposits for his flight arrangements. The requests came faster, the urgency more intense, and somewhere deep down, beneath the hope and the loneliness, a small voice started whispering, "Margaret, you're being played." But was I ready to hear it? Would I keep falling deeper, or would I finally start investigating the man I'd given my heart and my money to? The turning point came on a Sunday morning in mid-April when I was having brunch with my daughters, Sarah and Emily. Emily, who works in cybersecurity for a tech company in San Francisco, asked casually, "So, Mom, when exactly is this Sheikh guy arriving? It's been what, 2 months?" I found myself making excuses. The deal was complicated. International banking was slow. He was dealing with family issues. Sarah, always the protective older sister, exchanged a look with Emily. "Mom," Sarah said carefully, "have you actually video called him, like seen his face clearly?" I explained about the technical difficulties, the poor internet in Dubai, his self-consciousness about aging. Even as I spoke, I heard how weak it sounded. Emily pulled out her phone. "Let me see his profile." I showed her Khalid's Facebook page, the polished photos, the professional bio, the posts about charitable foundations and business ventures. Emily's expression shifted from casual interest to focused concentration. She started screenshotting images, her fingers moving rapidly across her phone. "Mom, I'm going to run some checks. Just humor me, okay?" I felt defensive, almost angry. "Emily, not everyone online is a scammer. Some people are genuine." But she just squeezed my hand. "I know, Mom, and I hope he is. But you've sent him money, right? Let me just verify a few things. If he's real, great. If not, you deserve to know." That afternoon, I couldn't shake the conversation. I opened my laptop and began reviewing every interaction with Khalid. The patterns I'd been too infatuated to notice suddenly jumped out. He never called from a Dubai number, always WhatsApp. The video calls always malfunctioned at convenient moments. The documents he sent looked official but lacked specific details I'd recognize from actual financial contracts. And the bank accounts, none were actually in his name. That afternoon, I couldn't shake the conversation. I opened my laptop and began reviewing every interaction with Khalid. The patterns I'd been too infatuated to notice suddenly jumped out. He never called from a Dubai number, always WhatsApp. The video calls always malfunctioned at convenient moments. The documents he sent looked official, but lacked specific details I'd recognize from actual financial contracts. And the bank accounts, none were actually in his name. So I decided to check his background online. I did something I should have done months ago. I opened Google and typed, Sheikh romance scam Dubai. The results flooded my screen. Hundreds of articles, forum posts, victim testimonies, women from across America, Europe, Australia, all telling variations of the same story. Wealthy Middle Eastern men, oil investors, widowers, promising love and partnership, always the technical difficulties on video calls, always the unexpected financial emergencies, always the offshore accounts and compliance fees. Of the same story. Wealthy Middle Eastern men, oil investors, widowers, promising love and partnership, always the technical difficulties on video calls, always the unexpected financial emergencies, always the offshore accounts and compliance fees. My hands trembled as I clicked through page after page. The FBI had an entire section on romance scams. The Federal Trade Commission reported Americans lost $547 million to romance fraud in 2023 alone, with the average victim losing $23,000. Women over 50 were the primary targets. The playbook was identical. Establish emotional connection, create trust, introduce financial crisis, exploit guilt and commitment. I found a website called Romance Scams Now, run by volunteers who help victims identify fraudsters. They had a reverse image search tool. I uploaded one of Khalid's photos, the one where he wore a dark suit against the Dubai skyline. The results came back in seconds. The image appeared on at least 40 different profiles across Facebook, Instagram, and dating sites. Sheikh Ahmed Al-Rahman in London, Dr. Khalid Mansouri in Qatar, Ibrahim Al-Sayed in Kuwait. Same photo, different names, different cities, different stories. My stomach lurched. I uploaded another photo. Same result. Stolen image, multiple fake profiles. Every picture he'd sent me belonged to someone else. The man I'd been talking to, the voice I'd fallen for, the personality I'd connected with, none of it was attached to those images. Khalid al-Mansouri didn't exist. I sat in my kitchen as the April sunset painted my walls orange, and I felt something I'd never experienced before. Complete disorientation. Who had I been talking to? Where was he really located? What did he actually look like? Every memory, every conversation, every moment of connection, all of it was contaminated by lies. My phone buzzed. A message from Khalid. Habibti, I have wonderful news. The deal is finally closing. I'll have the wire transfer by Wednesday, and I've booked my flight to Minneapolis for Friday. I can't wait to hold you. These months of waiting will finally be over. I'm also arranging a surprise. I'm having a jewelry designer create a custom necklace with your birthstone. It requires a deposit of $12,000, but when you see it, you'll understand why I wanted to give you something so special. I stared at the message. In the past, I would have felt excitement, anticipation, the flutter of romance. Now I felt cold rage. This person, whoever he was, thought I was still his mark. He thought one more story, one more promise, one more request would work. He didn't know I'd spent the afternoon tearing apart his fabricated identity. I made a decision. Instead of confronting him immediately, I would investigate further. I would trace the bank accounts, contact other victims, document everything. Because this wasn't just about recovering my money anymore. This was about understanding exactly how this operation worked and who was behind it. Emily had given me the tools. My financial background gave me the analytical skills. And my anger, that gave me the determination. I typed back, "That sounds beautiful, Khalid. But before we proceed, I'd love to video call tonight. I want to see your face when we talk about our future together. It's been too long with these technical issues. Surely you can find a stable connection for just 10 minutes. His response came after a long pause. Of course, Habibti. Tonight at 9 p.m. I'll make it work. I knew he wouldn't call, but I wanted to see what excuse he'd manufacture next. What I didn't know was that my simple request was about to unravel an operation far more sophisticated and far closer to home than I'd imagined. 9 p.m. arrived. No call. At 9:17 p.m., a message appeared. Margaret, I'm so sorry. There was an emergency at the oil field, an equipment malfunction that required immediate attention. Lives were at risk. I had to oversee the crisis response. Please forgive me. Tomorrow, I promise. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the file Emily had sent me that evening, a detailed analysis of Khalid's digital footprint. My daughter had pulled in favors from colleagues, used specialized software, traced digital patterns. What she'd discovered was both fascinating and horrifying. The bank accounts Khalid provided were registered to shell companies in Delaware and Wyoming, states known for lenient disclosure laws. The companies had been created within weeks of each other, all using variations of generic names: Global Investment Holdings, International Finance Partners, Emirates Capital Management. None had legitimate business operations. They existed solely to receive wire transfers. Emily had also traced the phone number. Despite using WhatsApp, the underlying cellular data showed origination points across West Africa, primarily Nigeria and Ghana, not Dubai. The timestamps of our conversations corresponded to West African time zones, not Emirates hours. When Khalid messaged me at 8 a.m. Dubai time, it was actually evening in Lagos. But here's what broke me. Emily found a database maintained by an organization called Advocating Against Romance Scammers. She entered the details of my case, the story elements, the financial requests, the specific language patterns. The database matched my experience to over 70 other reported cases in the past 18 months alone. 70 women, across 15 states, all contacted by Sheikh Khalid al-Mansouri. Same photos, same story, same progression of requests. Total reported losses, $1.2 million. I read the victim statements. Linda in Arizona lost $45,000. Patricia in Florida lost $67,000. Catherine in Oregon lost $89,000. Each woman's story was heartbreakingly similar. Widows, divorcees, professional women in their 50s and 60s, women who considered themselves intelligent and careful. Women exactly like me. One victim, named Joyce from Texas, had included a note that stopped me cold. I'm a retired police detective. I spent 30 years spotting liars and criminals, and I still fell for it. Because when you're lonely, when someone makes you feel valued and desired after years of feeling invisible, you don't want to see the truth. You want to believe in the fairy tale. I stayed up until 3 a.m. reading case files, cross-referencing details, building a timeline. The operation was sophisticated. Multiple scammers likely worked the same fake identity, which explained why Khalid's writing style occasionally shifted. They had scripts, templates, contingency responses for different victim reactions. They studied American culture, financial systems, emotional vulnerabilities. This wasn't amateur hour. This was organized fraud. Tuesday morning, I made a decision that would have seemed insane 48 hours earlier. I contacted 5 of the other victims whose information was publicly available on the scammer database. I introduced myself, explained my situation, asked if they'd be willing to share information. By Tuesday evening, all 5 had responded. We created a group chat. Linda from Arizona. Margaret, I'm so glad you reached out. I've been trying to track this bastard for 8 months. I have bank account information, email addresses, photos of the fake documents he sent me. Let's pool everything. Patricia from Florida. I actually hired a private investigator who traced one of the accounts to a money mule in Cleveland, Ohio. The person receiving the transfers was a 24-year-old named Deshaun Marcus, who thought he was working a legitimate remote job. He'd receive wire transfers and convert them to cryptocurrency, then send the crypto to wallets in Nigeria. He was just a middleman who didn't even know it was a scam. This was the breakthrough. If we could identify the money mules, we could potentially trace back to the actual scammers. Patricia shared the PI's report, which included addresses, phone numbers, bank details. I cross-referenced this information with the accounts I'd wired money to. 3 of my 7 transactions went through the exact same Cleveland address. Wednesday morning, instead of responding to Khalid's latest message asking for another $15,000 for customs clearance on the gold shipment, I contacted the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. I filed a detailed report, attaching all the evidence our victim group had compiled. I provided bank account numbers, phone records, transaction histories, the PI's findings about the Cleveland money mule. The FBI response was faster than I expected. Within hours, an agent named Sarah Chen called me. Ms. Reynolds, thank you for this report. We've been tracking a West African fraud ring operating through the Midwest. Your information connects to several active investigations. Would you be willing to cooperate as a witness? I agreed immediately. Agent Chen explained the challenge. Romance scammers typically operated from outside the U.S., making prosecution difficult. But if they could catch the domestic money mules and flip them into witnesses, they could build cases against the overseas operators through international law enforcement partnerships. My case, combined with the other victims' information, could help shut down an entire network. There's one more thing we need, Agent Chen said. We need you to keep communicating with the scammer. Act like you still believe the story. If we can keep him engaged, we can gather more intelligence, potentially trace his exact location, identify additional money mules. My hands clenched. You want me to pretend I'm still falling for this? I know it's difficult, but you're in a unique position. You've discovered the fraud, but he doesn't know you know. That gives us leverage. If you cut contact now, he'll just move on to the next victim. If you stay engaged, we can use your case to stop him from hurting anyone else. I thought about Linda, Patricia, Catherine, Joyce. I thought about the 70 reported victims and the countless unreported ones. I thought about my own $31,000 and the years I'd spent advising clients about protecting their assets, only to become a victim myself. Tell me exactly what you need me to do. Agent Chen's instructions would require me to become something I'd never been before, an active participant in a sting operation. But what neither of us knew was that Khalid was about to make a move that would change everything. He was planning to actually come to the United States, not to see me, but to meet another victim who'd fallen even deeper than I had. What shocking turn would this story take? Stay with me and hit that subscribe button, because this is about to get even more intense. Agent Chen's plan was straightforward but psychologically brutal. I would continue my relationship with Khalid, express renewed trust, and even make one more small payment to maintain credibility. The FBI would monitor all communications, trace digital footprints, and coordinate with Nigerian law enforcement to identify the scammer's physical location. What made this complicated was my emotional state. Every message I sent felt like swallowing glass. Khalid, I'm so sorry I doubted you. The stress of waiting has been difficult, but I trust you. Let's move forward with the jewelry deposit. Typing those words knowing he was a fraud, knowing he'd stolen from 70 women, knowing everything was a calculated manipulation, it took every ounce of control I had. My daughters struggled too. Sarah wanted me to cut all contact immediately. Mom, you don't owe this creep anything. Let the FBI handle it without putting you through more trauma. But Emily understood the strategic value. If Mom can help stop this operation, prevent other women from losing everything, it's worth the discomfort. We'll support you, Mom. The victim group chat became my lifeline. Linda, Patricia, Catherine, Joyce, and 2 others. We messaged daily, sharing our experiences, our anger, our determination. Patricia revealed something shocking. I actually found Khalid's real Facebook profile. His actual name is Richard Obi, 32 years old, lives in Lagos. He has a wife and 2 kids. He posts about making money online, about being an entrepreneur. He's bragging about his lifestyle while destroying ours. We stared at the photos of Richard Obi, young, unremarkable. Nothing like the distinguished sheikh in the stolen images. This was the person I'd sent $31,000 to. This was the person I'd shared intimate thoughts with, cried to, imagined a future with. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. Agent Chen warned us not to confront Richard directly. It could compromise the investigation. But Patricia's discovery meant we could now monitor his actual social media activity, see his real life, understand the operation from the inside. He posted regularly about digital marketing, international clients, and securing the bag. To his Nigerian friends, this was just business. To us, it was fraud that devastated lives. Through our surveillance, we discovered Richard wasn't working alone. He was part of a loosely organized group called Yahoo Boys, a West African term for internet fraudsters. They shared scripts, traded victim information, advised each other on overcoming suspicion. It was a subculture with its own terminology, status hierarchy, even music celebrating the lifestyle. Richard's posts showed him at Lagos nightclubs, wearing designer clothes, driving expensive cars, all funded by women like me. One post from March showed him holding stacks of cash with the caption, "Another blessed week. God is good." The comments were full of congratulations from other Yahoo boys. "Teach me, boss. You're the king. Foreign clients paying well." I felt sick, but Agent Chen said this intelligence was valuable. We're building a comprehensive picture of the network. The more we understand their methods, community structure, and operational patterns, the more effective our intervention becomes. Meanwhile, Khalid's communications grew more urgent. "Habibti, I have incredible news. The deal closed. I'm transferring $450,000 to your account as a gift, a sign of my commitment to our future. But to process the international wire transfer, the bank needs a clearance fee of $18,000. It's the last payment, I promise. After this, we'll have everything we've dreamed of." This was the classic advance fee escalation. Promise a large payout to justify one more payment. Agent Chen told me to express interest but ask questions. "Khalid, this is wonderful, but I'm confused about the process. Can you explain exactly how this bank transfer works? Why do I need to pay a fee to receive money?" His response was a masterclass in manipulation. "Margaret, I understand your caution. International banking regulations require recipient verification fees to prevent money laundering. It's standard protocol for transfers over $400,000. I'm sending you official documentation from Emirates Bank explaining the process. Please trust me. After everything we've been through, don't let bureaucracy stop us now." The documents he sent looked legitimate. Bank letterheads, official seals, legal language. But Emily analyzed them and found they were PDF forgeries, created using templates available on dark web forums. Every element was designed to overcome logical objections. Agent Chen was impressed with the sophistication. These operations are evolving rapidly. They're using AI to generate documents, deepfake technology for video calls, social engineering tactics that rival corporate espionage. We're not dealing with amateur scammers anymore. But here's what neither Agent Chen nor I anticipated. While we were investigating Richard, another member of his network was preparing to travel to the United States to meet a victim in person. And that victim was about to contact me, desperate for help. The case was about to get very, very real. The call came on a Thursday evening in late April, an unknown number from Pennsylvania. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. A woman's voice, older, shaky, desperate. "Is this Margaret Reynolds, the one from the romance scam victim group?" "Yes, who is this?" "My name is Dorothy Chen. I'm 67 years old, from Philadelphia. I found your name on the scammer database. I need help. I think I've made a terrible mistake." Her voice broke. I pulled up a chair, my heart already sinking. "Dorothy, tell me what happened." She'd been communicating with someone calling himself Colonel James Morrison, U.S. Army, stationed in Syria. Same playbook: widower, career military, investment opportunities. But unlike my situation, Dorothy's scammer had taken things further. He'd convinced her he was returning to the States and wanted to meet in person. He'd asked her to rent an apartment in Philadelphia where they could live together. He'd sent her $85,000 via check to cover first year's rent, furniture, and living expenses. "Dorothy," I said carefully, "did you verify the check?" Silence. Then, "The bank said it would clear in 3 to 5 business days. I deposited it on Monday. James, Colonel Morrison, is arriving on Saturday. He asked me to withdraw $40,000 in cash to bring to the apartment. He said he needs immediate access to funds because military banking is complicated during overseas deployment transitions." My blood ran cold. This was a check fraud variation. The check would bounce after she'd withdrawn and handed over the cash. She'd be liable for the full $85,000 plus whatever she gave him. "Dorothy, listen to me very carefully. That check is going to bounce. This is a scam. Do not withdraw any money. Do not meet this person on Saturday. She started crying. But he's been so kind. We've talked for 6 months. He knows everything about me. My grandchildren, my late husband, my life. How could all of that be fake? Because that's what they do. I've been investigating these operations for weeks. Please, you need to contact your bank immediately. Explain the situation. Try to reverse the deposit before... Margaret, there's more. Her voice dropped. He sent me his flight information. American Airlines, Flight 1847, arriving Philadelphia International on Saturday at 2:45 p.m. He sent me a photo of his passport, his military ID, everything. I checked the flight. It's real. Someone is actually coming. This was unprecedented. Romance scammers never met victims in person. The entire operation relied on distance and anonymity. Dorothy, send me everything. Photos, flight details, ID images, all of it. Right now. She forwarded the files. I immediately called Agent Chen, who conference called in 2 other FBI agents. We analyzed the documents in real time. The military ID was fake. Wrong format, incorrect unit designations. But the passport looked authentic. And when Agent Chen verified the flight, the passenger name matched. James Morrison, seat 14B, confirmed reservation. This changes everything, Agent Chen said. If someone is actually traveling to meet her, we have an opportunity to make an arrest on U.S. soil. But we need to be certain it's connected to the same fraud network. Margaret, can you compare Dorothy's case to your communications with Khalid? I spent the next hour on a 3-way call with Dorothy and Agent Chen, going through every detail. The linguistic patterns matched. Same grammatical quirks, same emotional manipulation tactics, same financial progression. More importantly, Dorothy's Colonel Morrison had asked for money to be transferred to one of the same shell companies I'd sent funds to. This wasn't coincidence. This was the same operation. Here's what we're going to do, Agent Chen said. Dorothy, you're going to continue the plan. Tell Morrison you'll meet him at the airport. Margaret, I want you to be there too. As backup, as a witness. We'll have agents positioned throughout the terminal. When Morrison arrives, we'll approach, verify his identity, and if he's connected to the fraud network, we make an arrest. Dorothy's voice trembled. You want me to actually go through with meeting him? You'll be completely safe. We'll have eyes on you every moment. This is the break we've been waiting for. Romance scammers operating from Nigeria are almost impossible to prosecute. But if someone is physically entering the United States to collect money from victims, we can charge them with wire fraud, conspiracy, money laundering. We can actually get justice. I thought about the 70 victims, the $1.2 million stolen, Richard Obie's social media posts flaunting his wealth. I'll be there, I said. Saturday morning, I drove 4 hours from Minneapolis to Philadelphia. Agent Chen met me at a hotel near the airport, briefed me on the operation, gave me a communication device. Dorothy arrived an hour later, terrified but determined. I spent 40 years as a schoolteacher, she said. I've dealt with difficult situations, but nothing like this. At 2:30 p.m., we were positioned in the arrivals terminal. Plainclothes FBI agents were scattered throughout, sitting at restaurants, reading newspapers, pretending to wait for passengers. Dorothy held a sign she'd made. Welcome home, James. Her hands shook. I stood 20 feet away, watching, my heart pounding. Flight 1847 landed. Passengers began streaming through the arrivals gate. We waited and waited. Then Agent Chen's voice came through my earpiece. We have a problem. James Morrison checked in for the flight in Lagos, but security footage shows he never boarded. The seat was empty. Dorothy's face collapsed. But before we could process this, another agent's voice crackled through. Wait, we have a male, mid-20s, approaching the woman with the sign. He's not Morrison from the passport photo. Repeat, wrong individual approaching the target. Who was this new man? And why was he approaching Dorothy? If this wasn't the person she was expecting, what was happening here? This story is about to reveal secrets you won't believe. So make sure you're subscribed, because what happens next will shock you. The young man walking toward Dorothy was nothing like the distinguished Colonel Morrison from the photos. He looked barely 25, wearing jeans and a hoodie, carrying a small backpack. He scanned the crowd nervously, then spotted Dorothy's sign. His face lit up with recognition. Or was it relief? Agent Chen's voice was sharp in my earpiece. "All units hold position. Let's see how this plays out." Dorothy stood frozen, confused, clutching her welcome sign. The young man approached her, smiling. "Mrs. Chen? Dorothy? Hi, I'm Marcus. James asked me to meet you. He missed his connecting flight in New York. He'll be here in a few hours. He asked me to take you to the apartment and help you get settled." Dorothy's voice was small, uncertain. "Marcus? James never mentioned you." "Oh, I'm his nephew. I live in Jersey. Uncle James called me this morning, said his flight got delayed, asked if I could help out. He didn't want you waiting at the airport for hours." The story was smooth, rehearsed, designed to sound plausible. Dorothy glanced toward me. A brief, panicked look. Agent Chen made the call. "Move in. Now." Within seconds, 4 agents materialized around Marcus, badges displayed. "FBI, we need to ask you some questions." Marcus's face went white. "What? I didn't do anything. I'm just helping my uncle." But his voice cracked. His hands trembled. He wasn't a master criminal. He was terrified. They moved him to a private security office. Agent Chen allowed me and Dorothy to observe from an adjacent room through one-way glass. Marcus sat hunched in a metal chair, tears streaming down his face. "I swear I don't know what this is about. My uncle asked me to meet his girlfriend, help her move some stuff. That's all." "What's your full name?" Agent Chen asked. "Marcus Toussaint. I live in Newark. And your uncle, James Morrison. Where is he right now?" Marcus hesitated. He's coming from overseas. Military stuff. He told me he'd land later today." "Marcus, let me be clear. There is no James Morrison. There's no colonel, no military deployment, no overseas assignment. You've been recruited as part of an international fraud operation targeting elderly women. The question is, did you know that? Or are you a victim too?" The recognition in Marcus's face was heartbreaking. He wasn't a scammer. He was another kind of victim. Over the next hour, his story emerged. Marcus was a college dropout working part-time at a warehouse. 3 months ago, someone contacted him on Instagram offering a personal assistant job, $500 per task, mostly simple errands like receiving packages, transferring money, occasionally meeting people. The boss communicated only through encrypted messaging apps. Marcus never met him in person, never questioned the legitimacy. He needed the money. He told me this job was helping his girlfriend move to Philadelphia, said she's older, needs help, and he's stuck overseas finishing a business deal. He sent me $500 yesterday, told me to meet her at the airport, get the cash she's carrying, and transfer it to an account he'd provide, then drive her to an address in Philly. Marcus looked at Dorothy through the glass. "I swear I thought I was helping. I didn't know it was this." Agent Chen leaned forward. "Marcus, we believe you, but we need your full cooperation. Every message, every instruction, every account number. We need all of it. And we need you to continue communicating with your boss like nothing happened. Can you do that?" Marcus nodded frantically. "Yes, anything. I don't want to go to prison. If you help us catch the people running this operation, we'll work with the prosecutor on your case. But you need to be completely honest. No more secrets." They brought in FBI tech specialists who cloned Marcus's phone, extracted all communications with Uncle James. The messages revealed a sophisticated operation. James had recruited at least 15 money mules across the East Coast. College students, unemployed workers, anyone desperate for easy cash. Each mule handled small pieces of larger schemes, never seeing the full picture. The account Marcus was supposed to transfer Dorothy's cash to belong to another shell company. This one registered in Nevada. Agent Chen traced it to the same network we'd been investigating. Richard Obie and his Yahoo Boys associates were running a coordinated multi-state operation using American citizens as unwitting accomplices. Dorothy sat beside me, processing everything. "I actually prepared $40,000 in cash," she whispered. "It's in my car. I was going to hand it to him, to Marcus, and drive away thinking I'd just met my future stepnephew. I would have lost everything. I held her hand. But you didn't. You reached out for help. You trusted your instincts. She shook her head. No, I was ready to believe. Even standing there, seeing someone who clearly wasn't James, I wanted to believe the nephew story. That's how powerful the manipulation is. They make you want to ignore reality. Agent Chen returned with an update. Marcus has agreed to full cooperation. We're using his phone to communicate with the fraudsters, making them think the meeting went as planned. We're telling them Dorothy handed over the cash and Marcus is processing the transfer. This buys us time to coordinate with Nigerian law enforcement. What about the real James Morrison, the actual person whose passport they copied? I asked. We're tracking that. Likely another American victim whose identity documents were stolen during an earlier scam. These networks are layered. They victimize people in multiple ways. The operation shifted into a new phase. Instead of investigating in isolation, we now had active leverage. Marcus continued sending messages to James, reporting successful cash pickup. The responses came quickly, full of praise and new instructions. Good job, nephew. Transfer the funds to this account. Bonus coming your way. Agent Chen monitored everything, building evidence, connecting dots. But the real breakthrough came that evening when Nigerian police, working with Interpol and FBI intelligence, raided an apartment complex in Lagos. They arrested 4 individuals, including Richard Obi. The news came through while Dorothy and I sat in the FBI field office, exhausted, drinking bad coffee. Agent Chen walked in, smiling for the first time. We got him. Richard Obi is in custody. Nigerian authorities seized computers, phones, client lists. This is a massive break. I felt a surge of emotion I couldn't quite name. Relief, vindication, grief for all the time and money lost. What happens now? Now we build the case. We connect every victim, every transaction, every communication. We work with Nigerian prosecutors to charge Obi and his associates. And we help victims like you and Dorothy recover what we can. Though I'll be honest, financial recovery is difficult in these cases. Dorothy spoke up. I don't care about the money anymore. I care that he can't do this to anyone else. But as we'd soon discover, arresting Richard Obi was just the beginning. His operation was bigger than we'd imagined, and his arrest triggered a chain reaction that would expose the full scale of the romance scam industry. And what happened next? You need to hear this. The investigation was about to take an even more shocking turn. The weeks following Richard Obi's arrest became a crash course in the global romance scam ecosystem. Agent Chen invited me and Dorothy to participate in victim outreach, contacting other women who'd been targeted by Obi's network, gathering evidence, building the prosecution case. What started as my personal investigation transformed into something larger, a mission to dismantle an entire fraud infrastructure. We discovered Obi wasn't operating alone. He was part of a syndicate of at least 30 Yahoo boys who shared victim information, collaborated on scripts, and even developed relationships to each other. If one scammer got bored or faced suspicion from a victim, he'd transfer the case to a colleague who'd continue the manipulation. That's why Khalid's writing style occasionally shifted. I'd been talking to multiple people pretending to be one person. The Nigerian authorities provided access to Obi's seized computers. The contents were devastating. Spreadsheets tracking hundreds of victims, names, ages, locations, psychological profiles, financial statuses, amounts extracted. We were reduced to data points. Margaret Reynolds, 58, Minneapolis, divorced, lonely, financially stable, extracted $31,000, potential for more. But those files also gave us power. We identified 247 active victims across North America, Europe, and Australia. Agent Chen's team coordinated an international notification campaign. I personally called 63 women, warning them they were being scammed. The reactions varied. Some were grateful, some were defensive, some were already too deep to accept the truth. One woman, Helen from Toronto, refused to believe me. You don't know him like I do. Yes, he's asked for money, but our connection is real. You're just jealous because your relationship failed. She hung up. 3 weeks later, she called back crying. You were right. He asked for $50,000 for an emergency surgery. I finally did a reverse image search. I'm so sorry I didn't listen. I wasn't angry. I remembered being exactly where she was, wanting so desperately to believe that I ignored every red flag. Helen, you listened eventually. That's what matters. Now let's get you connected with resources. Dorothy and I became unofficial victim advocates. We created a website, Romance Scam Reality Check, where women could anonymously upload details of suspicious relationships. We developed a checklist of red flags, a guide for reporting fraud, and a support forum. Within a month, we had 400 members. The psychological recovery was harder than the financial loss. I'd spent months emotionally invested in someone who didn't exist. I'd shared intimate thoughts, vulnerabilities, dreams with a criminal who weaponized that information. How do you process that kind of betrayal? I started therapy. My counselor specialized in fraud victims and helped me understand the mechanics of manipulation. These scammers are experts in social engineering, she explained. They identify exactly what you need: validation, companionship, excitement, and they provide it in measured doses. You didn't fail. You were targeted by someone whose full-time job is exploiting human psychology. Sarah and Emily helped too. Sarah organized a document destruction party, where we shredded every photo, printed message, and fake document from Khalid. Emily taught me advanced digital security, two-factor authentication, privacy settings, reverse image searching. Mom, you're becoming a fraud prevention expert. Use that. She was right. My financial advising practice evolved. I added a new service: Romance Fraud Prevention for Mature Women. I taught clients how to recognize manipulation tactics, verify online identities, protect their assets. The demand was overwhelming. Apparently, I wasn't the only professional woman who'd been targeted. In June, Agent Chen called with unexpected news. The Nigerian prosecutor is offering Obi a plea deal. He'll provide information on the larger syndicate in exchange for reduced prison time. But there's an opportunity here. They want victim impact statements to present at sentencing. Would you be willing to write one? I spent days crafting that statement. Not just about the money, but about the emotional manipulation, the violation of trust, the way the scam had made me question my own judgment. Richard Obi didn't just steal $31,000 from me. He stole months of my life, weaponized my loneliness, and made me doubt my intelligence and worth. The financial loss I can recover. The psychological damage takes longer. Dorothy wrote one too. So did Linda, Patricia, Catherine, and 47 other victims. The prosecutor compiled them into a 200-page document presented to the Nigerian court. The judge sentenced Obi to 12 years in prison, a landmark sentence for romance fraud in Nigeria. But the real victory came in August, when the FBI dismantled the entire Money Mule network on the U.S. side. Marcus Toussaint, the young man who'd met Dorothy at the airport, received probation in exchange for testimony. The other mules faced various charges, but most cooperated. The shell companies were shut down, accounts frozen. I thought that was the end. The scammer caught, the network dismantled, justice served. What I didn't anticipate was the final twist, one that would force me to confront the person I'd become through this ordeal, and decide whether revenge or recovery would define my future. The ending of this story will leave you speechless. Stay with me. In September, 5 months after I'd first discovered the truth about Khalid, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. Margaret.Reynolds, truth in September. 5 months after I'd first discovered the truth about Khalid, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. Margaret.Reynolds, truth@protonmail.com. The subject line read, "You destroyed my life." My hands trembled as I opened it. The message was from Richard Obi. Somehow, from prison in Lagos, he'd found a way to contact me. "You think you are a hero? You think you stopped something? You only scratched the surface. There are hundreds like me. Thousands. For everyone you catch, 10 more start. This is business. You were just a client who refused to pay. And now I'm in prison because you couldn't accept that your fantasy wasn't real. I hope you're proud." I stared at the screen, rage building. Agent Chen had warned me this might happen. Scammers often tried to manipulate victims even after arrest, seeking sympathy or attempting intimidation. But something in Obi's message struck me as significant. You only scratched the surface. I forwarded the email to Agent Chen. She called within the hour. Margaret, I'm sorry this happened. We're working with Nigerian authorities to identify how he accessed email from prison, but he's not entirely wrong about the scale issue. Romance fraud is a multi-billion-dollar global industry. Obi's network was substantial, but it's one of hundreds operating from West Africa alone. So we did all of this, the investigation, the arrests, the victim outreach, and it barely made a dent? That's not what I'm saying. You saved Dorothy from losing $40,000. You helped recover funds for other victims. You educated hundreds of women through your website. Impact isn't always measured in total elimination. Sometimes it's measured in individual lives protected. But I wanted more. I'd spent months consumed by this case, transforming my entire practice, dedicating countless hours to victim advocacy. The idea that Obi's arrest was essentially meaningless in the broader scheme felt intolerable. I called Dorothy. Did you see Obi's email? I got one too. Different message, same condescending tone. He told me I should be ashamed for seducing him with my vulnerability, as if we manipulated them. We conferenced in Linda, Patricia, and Catherine. All had received similar messages. Obi reaching out from prison, trying to reassert psychological control. It was his final manipulation, making us feel like our victory was hollow, our efforts meaningless. He wants us to give up, Linda said. He wants us to feel defeated so we stop helping other victims. That's the tell. If our work didn't matter, why would he bother contacting us? She was right. Obi's emails weren't admissions of defeat. They were last-ditch attempts at psychological warfare, which meant our advocacy was working. It was threatening enough that he felt compelled to undermine it. That realization sparked something. Instead of responding to Obi's provocation, we doubled down. Dorothy and I appeared on local news programs, sharing our stories. We partnered with AARP to create educational materials for older Americans about romance fraud. We testified before a Senate subcommittee examining online fraud legislation. The media attention brought unexpected consequences. Women from across the country reached out, not just victims, but family members who suspected their mothers, sisters, aunts were being scammed. We developed an intervention protocol. How to approach a loved one in a romance scam. What evidence to present. How to provide support without judgment. One call particularly struck me. A woman named Jennifer from Seattle. My mom is 62, widowed, talking to someone who claims to be a UN peacekeeper in Afghanistan. She's already sent $18,000. When I show her evidence that it's a scam, she gets angry and defensive. I don't know what to do. I spent an hour with Jennifer, walking her through the psychological dynamics. Your mom isn't stupid or gullible. She's emotionally invested. The scammer has created a version of himself that fills exactly what she needs. Proving it's fake means admitting she was fooled, which triggers shame. You need to approach this with compassion, not confrontation. We arranged for Jennifer's mother to speak with Dorothy, victim to victim, no judgment, just shared experience. 3 days later, Jennifer called back, crying with relief. She listened. She's cutting contact. She's devastated, but she's safe. Thank you. These moments reminded me why the work mattered. Obi was right that we couldn't stop every scammer, but we could save individuals. We could change the landscape incrementally. We could make it harder for predators to operate. In October, Agent Chen called with unexpected news. We've been monitoring online scammer forums, places where Yahoo boys congregate and share tactics. Your name has come up multiple times. They're warning each other about you, about your website, about the victim network you've built. They're calling you a blocker, someone who interferes with their operations. Margaret, you've become notorious in their community. I didn't know whether to laugh or feel vindicated. So I've become the boogeyman for romance scammers? Essentially, yes. And that means you're having impact. They're adapting their tactics because of your advocacy. They're more cautious, more paranoid. That makes their operations less efficient, which protects potential victims. But there was a warning in Agent Chen's voice. It also means you need to be careful. Some of these operators are more aggressive than others. We've seen cases of retaliation, doxing, harassment, threats. I want you to implement additional security measures. She provided recommendations, enhanced privacy settings, security cameras, regular check-ins with law enforcement. It felt surreal. I'd gone from financial advisor to accidental activist to someone requiring protection from international fraud networks. The final piece fell into place in late October when Agent Chen called with urgent news. "Margaret, we have a situation. One of Obi's associates, a scammer we've been tracking, just entered the United States. Not through an airport, through the Mexican border. We believe he's targeting a victim in Texas, and based on online chatter we've intercepted, this isn't just about collecting money. There are indications he's planning something more dangerous." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean, more dangerous?" "We don't have full details, but the pattern is different. This isn't the typical romance scam. This feels like something personal, like retaliation." "Against who?" Agent Chen paused. "Against you, Margaret. We think he's coming for you." The room seemed to tilt. Everything I'd built, the advocacy work, the victim support, the public testimony, had made me a target. Not just digitally, but physically. Someone from Obi's network was in the United States, and I was in their crosshairs. How did my quest for justice turn into a fight for survival? What would I do now that the danger was real and headed my way? Agent Chen's words hung in the air like a death sentence. A scammer, someone from Richard Obi's network, had entered the United States illegally, and I was the target. The abstract threat of online fraud had suddenly become terrifyingly concrete. "We're putting you under protective surveillance immediately," Agent Chen said. "Pack a bag. We're moving you to a secure location until we identify and apprehend this individual." "No." The word came out stronger than I felt. "If I disappear, what message does that send? That they can intimidate us into silence? That advocating for victims puts you in danger, so you should stay quiet? Margaret, this isn't about optics. This is about your safety. What about Dorothy, Linda, Patricia, all the women whose names are on that website? Are you putting all of them in protective custody too?" Agent Chen's silence told me everything. They couldn't protect everyone. And if I accepted special protection, I'd be abandoning the very community I'd built. "Tell me what you know," I said. "Give me the facts, and let me make an informed decision." Over the next hour, Agent Chen laid it out. The scammer's name was Emmanuel Adeyemi, 29 years old, one of Obi's closest associates in Lagos. He'd crossed into the United States through Tijuana 3 days ago using a fake passport. Border surveillance had identified him only after he'd already entered. His digital footprint showed him traveling east, first Phoenix, then Albuquerque, now somewhere in Texas. The FBI had intercepted encrypted messages between Emmanuel and other Yahoo boys. The language was coded, but clear enough. "The American woman needs to learn respect. Make an example. Show them there are consequences for interference." "How did he even know about me?" I asked. "Your media appearances, the Senate testimony, the website. It's all public. You've become a symbol of resistance against romance scammers. To most people, you're a hero. To people like Emmanuel, you're a threat to their livelihood." Agent Chen showed me Emmanuel's photo. Young, ordinary-looking, someone who'd blend into any crowd. That was the terrifying part. He wasn't some obvious menace. He looked like a college student, a grocery store clerk, someone's nephew. What's his plan? Is he trying to hurt me? Intimidate me? We don't know. But based on his online behavior and Obi's psychological profile, we believe this is about reasserting dominance. Romance scammers operate through psychological manipulation. You've disrupted that by exposing their methods, empowering victims to fight back. This might be his attempt to restore the power dynamic, to make you the victim again. A chill ran through me. So this is about control. Everything with these operators is about control. I made my decision. I'm not hiding. But I'm not stupid either. What security measures can we implement while I maintain my normal life? Agent Chen wasn't happy, but she respected my choice. Within hours, my house was equipped with a sophisticated alarm system. An FBI agent would maintain surveillance from an unmarked vehicle on my street. I was given a panic button device that would alert law enforcement immediately if triggered. Sarah and Emily were briefed and put on alert. If Emmanuel approaches you, don't engage, Agent Chen warned. Don't try to confront him. Don't try to reason with him. Activate the panic button and get to a public, populated area. 3 days passed in tense normalcy. I went to work, met with clients, updated the website. Every person I passed on the street became a potential threat. Every car that drove slowly through my neighborhood sparked paranoia. I was living the anxiety that romance scam victims felt when they realized they'd been targeted, the sense that danger lurked in every interaction. On the 4th day, Thursday afternoon, I was leaving my office building when I noticed him. A young black man, mid-20s, sitting in a coffee shop across the street. He was watching me. Not subtly, deliberately, making sure I saw him. Our eyes met. He smiled. It was the most unsettling smile I'd ever seen. Not threatening, not friendly, just knowing. He stood up, still maintaining eye contact, and started walking toward me. My hand went to the panic button in my purse, but something made me hesitate. He wasn't moving aggressively. He walked calmly, hands visible, non-threatening body language. People were everywhere. Downtown Minneapolis at 4 p.m. on a Thursday, dozens of witnesses. If he meant to hurt me, this was a strange approach. He stopped about 10 feet away. Margaret Reynolds? Who are you? My name is Emmanuel. I think you've been looking for me. His accent was distinct. Nigerian, educated. The same speech patterns I'd heard in Khalid's voice messages. Every instinct screamed to run, to activate the panic button. But I held my ground. If you're here to threaten me, you've wasted a trip. The FBI knows you're in the country. You're being tracked. He laughed, genuine amusement. I'm not here to threaten you, Ms. Reynolds. I'm here to talk. 5 minutes. In public. All these witnesses. He gestured to the crowded street. I just want to have a conversation. Why would I talk to you? Because despite what you think, we're not so different. We both understand manipulation. We both know how to read people, how to find their vulnerabilities. The difference is, I use that knowledge to take money. You use it to take away my livelihood. I respect the skill, even if I don't like the outcome. His audacity was breathtaking. He was treating this like a professional consultation, not a confrontation between predator and prey. You have 3 minutes, I said, and my hand stays on this panic button the entire time. Fair enough. He gestured to a bench nearby. Public, visible, safe. We sat, maintaining careful distance. I want you to stop, he said simply. The website, the media appearances, the victim advocacy. You're costing me and my associates millions of dollars. You're making our work exponentially harder. That's exactly the point. I understand. But here's what you don't understand. We're not going away. Romance scams have existed for decades. They'll exist for decades more. You're fighting an industry, not individuals. OB goes to prison. Someone takes his place. You expose one method, we develop another. This is economic survival for thousands of people in Nigeria, Ghana, across West Africa. You're not fighting criminals. You're fighting poverty, lack of opportunity, systemic inequality. I stared at him. So I'm supposed to feel sorry for you? You're stealing life savings from widows and justifying it with sociology? I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm explaining reality. But here's my offer. You scale back your advocacy, stop the media campaign, take down the website. In exchange, I'll give you information. Names, methods, accounts that will help the FBI make bigger arrests. Not foot soldiers like me and Obi, but the organizers. The people running trafficking networks, laundering cartel money, facilitating real violence. Your victim advocacy saves individuals. My information could dismantle infrastructures. It was manipulation, obviously. Another scam, wrapped in a different package. But the terrifying part was how tempting it sounded. Trade my small-scale victim support for intelligence that could generate systemic change. And if I refuse? Emmanuel's expression didn't change. Then I go back to Nigeria, and this conversation never happened. But the scams continue. More victims, more suffering. You can save a few dozen women with your website, or you can help law enforcement stop operations that victimize thousands. Your choice. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Agent Chen. Do not engage. Units moving in now. I looked up. FBI agents were approaching from multiple directions, casually, but unmistakably converging on our location. Emmanuel saw them too. He stood slowly, hands still visible. Think about my offer, Ms. Reynolds. You have my encrypted contact information. It's in your email, buried in spam. If you change your mind, reach out. If not. He shrugged. Well, I tried the diplomatic approach. The agents closed in. Emmanuel didn't resist. He placed his hands behind his head, allowed himself to be detained, completely calm. As they led him away, he called back to me. Check your email, Margaret. The one from K Investments Opportunities. You'll find it interesting. Then he was gone, surrounded by federal agents, the crowd of onlookers buzzing with confusion and excitement. I stood there, trembling, adrenaline finally catching up with me. Agent Chen appeared at my side. Are you okay? Did he threaten you? No, he made an offer. He wants me to stop the advocacy work in exchange for intelligence. That's manipulation. Classic scammer technique. Offer something valuable to gain compliance. I know. But what if he's telling the truth? What if he actually has information that could help? Agent Chen's expression was firm. Then he can provide it through official channels. He doesn't get to negotiate terms with a civilian victim. This isn't a movie, Margaret. You're not a federal agent. You're a woman who got scammed and fought back. Don't let him turn this into something it's not. She was right. Of course she was right. But as I walked back to my car, escorted by FBI agents, I couldn't shake Emmanuel's words. You can save a few dozen women, or you can help stop operations that victimize thousands. That night, alone in my house with new security systems humming, I opened my spam folder, and there it was, an email from K Investments Opportunities, received 2 weeks ago, automatically filtered as junk. I opened it. Inside was a document, encrypted, password protected, and a note. The password is the amount you wired to Khalid. Total, in dollars, no punctuation. When you're ready to see what real justice looks like, open this file. E. My cursor hovered over the attachment. This was insane. This was dangerous. This was exactly what Agent Chen warned against. But I couldn't stop thinking about Helen in Toronto, who'd almost wired $50,000, about the 247 active victims we'd identified from Obi's computers, about the thousands more we'd never reach. I typed in the password, 31,000. The file opened. What I saw made me realize everything. The arrest, the trial, the victory had been just the beginning. And the choice I faced now would determine whether I was truly fighting for justice or just satisfying my own need for revenge. The document Emmanuel sent contained names, account numbers, organizational structures, and communication channels for a romance scam network spanning 7 countries. But more than that, it contained something I hadn't expected. Evidence of money laundering connections to human trafficking operations in Southeast Asia. I sat at my kitchen table until 3 a.m., reading through encrypted files that detailed how romance scam profits were being funneled into labor trafficking rings, how the same shell companies receiving wire transfers from lonely widows were also processing payments for smuggled workers, forged documents, and coerced labor contracts. The scale was staggering. Romance scams weren't just standalone fraud. They were entry-level revenue streams for criminal organizations involved in far darker enterprises. Every dollar I'd wired to Khalid hadn't just funded Emmanuel's lifestyle in Lagos. It had potentially contributed to exploitation chains I couldn't even fully comprehend. By sunrise, I'd made my decision. I called Agent Chen. Margaret, it's 6 a.m. What's wrong? I opened Emmanuel's file. You need to see this. All of it. She arrived within the hour, accompanied by 2 agents from the FBI's Transnational Organized Crime Unit. They spent the day analyzing the documents, verifying information, cross-referencing with existing investigations. This is legitimate intelligence, one agent finally confirmed. Some of these connections we'd suspected but couldn't prove. This could open up multiple international investigations. Agent Chen looked at me carefully. Margaret, how did you obtain this? I told her everything. Emmanuel's approach, his offer, the encrypted file. I expected anger, reprimands, warnings about civilian interference in federal investigations. Instead, she said quietly, "You know he manipulated you into opening that file, right? This wasn't altruism. He's serving his own agenda." I know. But does his motivation matter if the intelligence is real? It matters because we don't know his endgame. He's giving us information about competitors, about operations he's not personally invested in. He's eliminating business rivals while positioning himself as a cooperative witness. It's strategic, not ethical. She was right. Emmanuel hadn't experienced a moral awakening. He'd made a calculated business decision, sacrifice some network associates, reduce FBI pressure on himself, potentially negotiate a lighter sentence or immunity deal. But the intelligence still mattered. The trafficking connections still needed investigation. The victims of those operations still needed help. Over the following weeks, the FBI used Emmanuel's information to coordinate with Interpol, Europol, and law enforcement agencies across Asia and Africa. They identified trafficking routes, flagged suspicious financial transactions, and initiated rescue operations for dozens of individuals trapped in labor exploitation. Emmanuel was charged with illegal entry, wire fraud conspiracy, and several other federal crimes. But because of his cooperation, prosecutors offered a plea deal, reduced prison time, served in a U.S. facility, followed by deportation. I attended his sentencing hearing in December. He saw me in the gallery and nodded. Not apologetic, not defiant, just acknowledging my presence. When the judge asked if he had any statement, Emmanuel spoke clearly. "I'm not going to claim I'm sorry for scamming people. That would be a lie, and I've told enough lies. I did what I had to do to survive in a system that offered no legitimate opportunities. But I understand that my survival came at others' expense. Ms. Reynolds and women like her suffered because of my choices. If my cooperation helps stop worse crimes than romance fraud, maybe that's the closest I'll get to redemption." The judge sentenced him to 6 years, with credit for time served and cooperation. He'd likely serve 3, then face deportation. Outside the courthouse, Dorothy met me. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Honestly, I don't know. We won. Obi's in prison. Emmanuel's in custody. We've helped dozens of victims, but the scams continue. New operators replace the arrested ones. The websites are still full of fake profiles. The money transfers still flow. But fewer women are falling for it because of our work. That has to count for something." She was right. We couldn't stop every scammer, but we'd changed the landscape. We'd made it harder for predators to operate undetected. We'd created support systems for victims and educational resources for potential targets. My financial advisory practice had fully transformed. I now specialized in fraud prevention and financial security for mature adults. I taught workshops on digital literacy, online safety, and recognizing manipulation tactics. Sarah and Emily had become active in the advocacy work, bringing their professional expertise to expand our reach. The Romance Scam Reality Check website now had over 2,000 members across 40 states and 15 countries. We'd partnered with AARP, the FBI, and several international organizations to create comprehensive educational materials. In January, exactly 1 year after I first accepted Khalid's friend request, I did something symbolic. I wrote a check for $31,000, the exact amount I'd lost, and donated it to an organization supporting economic development programs in West Africa. Not as forgiveness, but as recognition that systemic poverty created ecosystems where scams flourished. Linda, Patricia, Catherine, Joyce, Dorothy, and I gathered that evening to mark the anniversary. We'd been through trauma, investigation, legal proceedings, and advocacy work together. We'd transformed from isolated victims into a formidable network. "You know what I realized?" Joyce said. "They targeted us because they thought we were vulnerable. Lonely, trusting, easy marks. But we turned out to be the opposite. We became investigators, advocates, threats to their entire operation. They underestimated us," Dorothy added. "They thought our loneliness made us weak. Instead, It made us determined. I raised my glass. To being underestimated, and to making sure no one underestimates lonely women ever again. We drank to that. Survivors who'd become warriors, victims who'd become advocates, women who'd been targeted for manipulation and responded with justice. My phone buzzed. An email notification. Subject line: "Thank you." It was from a woman in Oregon named Susan. I was communicating with someone claiming to be a doctor in Doctors Without Borders. He asked for $8,000 for medical supplies, but then I found your website, ran his photo through reverse image search, and discovered it was fake. You saved me from losing my savings. I can't thank you enough. I showed the email to the group. This was why we did the work. Not for headlines or recognition, but for messages like this. Individual women protected, families saved from financial devastation, lonely hearts spared betrayal. The scams would continue. New operators would emerge. But so would we. We'd keep educating, advocating, supporting, and fighting back. Because Sheikh Khalid al-Mansouri might not exist, but Margaret Reynolds did. And she was no longer anyone's victim. What did this journey reveal about the future of online safety? 2 years later, I received an unexpected letter from Richard Obi in Nigerian prison. Not manipulation this time. Genuine reflection. "Ms. Reynolds, I've had time to think about the harm I caused. I told myself it was just business, that victims were faceless numbers on spreadsheets. But your advocacy forced me to see the actual people I hurt. I won't ask forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that your work matters. Even criminals notice when someone fights back effectively. You made it harder for us to dehumanize our victims. That matters." I didn't respond. Some bridges don't need rebuilding. But I did frame one line from his letter and hang it in my office. "You made it harder for us to dehumanize our victims." That was the mission. Not stopping every scam, but making every victim visible, valuable, and vindicated. The work continues. Could your story or someone you love's story end differently thanks to this knowledge? Have you or someone you know ever been approached by an online romance that seemed too good to be true? Have you seen the warning signs, requests for money, technical difficulties on video calls, elaborate stories about overseas emergencies? Share this story, not to shame victims, but to protect potential targets. Romance scams thrive in silence and isolation. They collapse under awareness and community. If you've experienced romance fraud, you're not alone. Visit romancescamrealitycheck.org to connect with survivors, access resources, and learn how to report fraud. Your experience matters. Your voice matters. Together, we make it harder for predators to operate. Comment below. What red flag from this story resonated most with you? Let's protect each other.